Thank you. You're all familiar with Prevention Works. Our mission is to unify voices and be the guiding force on policy, practice, and attitudes that promote substance misuse prevention, health, and wellness in Vermont. Um, we partner with all of you, which is a valuable part of the work that we do. So we appreciate all of you. Um, this panel discussion today will be in two parts. We'll begin having two representatives from programs that offer internship programs and that partner with prevention organizations. Then there'll be time for Q&A from that group, those two folks. And then we'll follow that up with two prevention organization colleagues who utilize interns within their programs. And then we'll do a little Q&A after that. And then finally, we'll have the usual complete the evaluation that I'll share with you. And then we'll send you, we're having trouble with our certificates of participation downloading. So we'll send out those to everybody. So, are there any questions before we begin? And this is going to be the kind of thing, raise your hand but if you could save your questions till after each section, and then we'll open it up for questions from everybody. Okay. So now I'd like to introduce you to our two panelists who represent programs that offer internship opportunities and that partner with prevention organizations. Our panelists are Sue White. Sue has is the Director of Health Career Preparation and Practitioner Support at the Southern Vermont Area Health Education Center. Sue has been with AHAC for close to 25 years, coordinating various programs to support undergraduates and graduate students, as well as the primary care workforce in Southern Vermont. We are very lucky. Sue has been an active member in the Prevention Works Workforce Development Advisory Group that's been meeting for the last year and has made valuable contributions to the conversations about prevention careers and public health. So we thank Sue for joining us. And for her cohort in this group is Deb Hinchey. Deb is the Director of Undergraduate Public Health Programs at UVM. She holds an MPH in Public Health Practice from the University of Washington and a doctorate in education from UVM. Deb has been working with and teaching and mentoring students around community engaged learning for the best part of 12 years. Wow. And is passionate about developing reciprocal relationships and connecting students to community partners to improve their lives and their communities. So welcome. We'll start with Sue.
Okay. Do you want to I don't have to have that PowerPoint up, but it gives
it's up to you.
Go ahead, and it gives them something to look at while
you go ahead and start, and I'll pull it up. Hold on.
Okay, thanks. So she did thank you for that generous introduction. And actually, Deb, I'm happy to meet you virtually and would love to eager to learn more about what you do and how we can partner with UVM more. We do take a lot of UVM students, so I'm happy to make that connection. So we are a nonprofit. For those of you that don't know, we're a nonprofit healthcare workforce organization. So we work with students to try to get them interested in health careers, and that includes public health and prevention. And work with the graduate level students, medical students, and the primary care workforce. AHEC originally was designed or set up to help with gaps in the primary care health workforce area in rural areas. So as part of our Pathways to Health Careers is this paid part-time internship program that we have developed called C-SHIP. We try to work with the find match partners. So that's sort of where we come in and excited about working with prevention organizations so that we can try to recruit the students and match them with your organizations. So I think there's a lot of words on these slides, and I'm going to just hit the highlights, but it is something that I can share with you folks later. But on the next slide, we'll talk about the sort of, I call it a matchmaking kind of program. So we recruit the students. We advertise on what's called Handshake, which is the university's career center's platform. And we recruit the students and the organizations. do an initial sort of screening, looking at what their interests are and their skill sets, what the organization's interests and skills that they're looking for, and then would basically send you some resumes, hopefully more than one, but sometimes there's just one to three, to look over, see, and you got folks can then sort of take it from there as far as who you might want to interview, talk to, have questions with. One of the big advantages I think that we have too is that, but in addition to some of the recruiting processes, that we have funds, grant funding to pay interns. Um, you may have worked with interns before. We're going to talk about the different kinds of internships, and there are unpaid internships. There's internships with for academic credit, service learning internships. I know Cassandra has used interns that are taking are wanting credit, doing an internship for credit. A lot of colleges and classes sometimes require it. Ours is a paid internship, so we have funds for that. We also provide an evaluation for an internship and for the intern, sorry, and the supervisor to complete. And ours is just a part-time. It's up to 80 hours, 60 to 80 hours. And then we actually include a 20-hour didactic online program for them to do, and it's on health inequity. And that has enabled us to pay them $1,500 as a whole like stipend. So they're not getting paid hourly. They're not on our payroll. That's something to consider if you guys have funds and are paying your interns hourly, if they have to become part of your payroll system. That can if it's small, there's only 3 of you in the organization, payroll is super easy to do, then it's no problem. For bigger organizations, that can be, and agencies, that can be a real drawback to having an intern if they have to pay them. We actually believe strongly in paying our interns because it helps with inequity and allowing a broader range of applicants who can't afford to necessarily volunteer for the summer. So, yeah, I think on the next slide, we'll talk about what makes a good internship. And one of them is clear deliverables and developing a project description. And I know that people who've used interns that are going to be talking later will, go into more details on that. But expected tasks, it can be what your project is going to be at the end, what's it going to look like, what they're going to have accomplished. Is it going to be they've done and conducted a survey and done follow-up? If they've done a presentation to your board, sometimes it's a project can be around that. They can have done a TikTok present. Well, we won't do TikTok. They'll have done some social media posts for you or improved your website, or they've just done some research, done some data analysis, whatever it is. Be clear about what it is that you hope that they will have accomplished by the end. Certainly a timeline. The timeline can be somewhat flexible, but we find it very important for the students to have kind of a start and end time, and communication being probably the most important. And how you're going to communicate with them and when. And I know those of you who work with young people and students know you have to sometimes tell them to check their emails. They're not necessarily checking them on a regular basis. And so if that's the communication that we're going to use with them, I have to remind them, what's the email you want me to use this summer that you're going to be actually looking at? And providing regular feedback. Helping them be part of your organization or how they're going to contribute to organization's mission. They really like that. They like to know that the work that they're doing is of value to you, as well as to themselves as a student in building up their skill sets. So support and systems needed, I would say, yeah, communication, technology, just knowing you're both on the same page as far as what you're going to use to communicate. And if you're having an intern in person, you obviously need to think about physical space. And I know some of you are all remote, and our internships can be either remote, in person, or a combination of. But I have heard a lot from organizations that say we love the remote internship because we don't have physical space or a laptop or have to worry about when they're going to come in. So do they have a key to the office? That kind of thing. So, and students are, of course, happy with remote. They've been working remote, or at least comfortable with it, I should say. So recruiting, again, is something that we can, let's see, I was going to mention something else before I go on to the next slide, and that is that the different kinds of internships, full-time, thinking about your time, how much a project you have. Ours, again, I mentioned are part-time. They can be spread out over June, July, and August. Some internships, obviously, if you have a project for a full-time student, students love full-time internships. And then there is something in the internship world called micro internships. And those are like maybe 40 hours or less, and they could be spread out over a semester. So they're just really a small, very specific kind of project that somebody might have. But again, you might think about being able to use an intern to help get that done. So I think I'm ready for the last slide, the next slide. And this is our timeline and our sort of application process. So again, AHEC, I think it's an advantage is that we can do some of the recruiting for you and initial screening. But please understand that if you have an intern or a volunteer or somebody who's been working with, and you would like them to maybe get paid but don't have funds, or you want them to be part of our C-SHIP project, we can do that. Cassandra has sometimes often, already had a student, and I'm like, hey, if they meet our qualifications, which is they have to have some connection to Vermont. So that, and as you all understand in the nonprofit world, that's because of our funding. They require either they're living in Vermont, they attended Vermont high school, they're attending a Vermont college, or some connection here. They have to actually physically be in Vermont to complete the internship. So that's our recruiting once the big criteria that they have to meet. So we recruit projects generally in the fall and winter. We're recruiting them now. So any of you prevention coalitions that have projects, we are in need of some more, and we love to have prevention projects. Because again, it falls under public health. We have a lot of public health students interested in projects and internships. So we have posted our C-SHIP application and the description on what's called Handshake, as I mentioned. I'm pretty sure now all the Vermont colleges use that, and most of New England uses that. Even the state schools, Vermont State University uses Handshake now, which is very helpful. So we ask applicants to complete an online application, upload a resume. The application's deadline is basically through March, and then we start the matching process. And the application or the internships, are completed June, July, and August. We're pretty flexible about hours. Students are usually, since this is only part-time, they're usually working another job or taking classes, all that kind of thing. So talked about what makes a good internship, support and services are needed, what our process is. So, and they're going to talk, project development is a big one, but I'm going to let those of you that have had interns talk about how you developed good projects, because we don't develop the projects. We let the organizations and the organization or the agency internship site tell us what the project is. So we have an online form to fill out for anybody interested in, or you can certainly just email me and describe to me what kind of thing you're thinking about, and we'll try to have a student find a student for you, or at least give you some application options. The collaborative is a prevention coalition who have had interns for several years. I think they've found them very helpful because they keep coming back.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, a special shout out to the collaborative because they have funds some years to help pay for the interns, and that's great because that allows us to even have more internships. Then. And I will say that even if you don't use, AHEC interns, I love to see more and more organizations utilizing interns because I think it helps the sort of workforce to think about it. The healthcare world is not very good at pathways and pipeline programs, thinking about how to develop the workforce and have a pathway for students and young people to work. And that's what the Prevention Coalition, I know that's what you guys are working on, working toward. So the more people can utilize internships and students engaging them, the better. In Springfield, in the area that I work in, it's not a college right now, so right in the area regionally. So I think it's harder for businesses to think about utilizing youth interns, volunteers, maybe in the same way that Burlington area does. So I congratulate you guys for thinking about this and promoting it. And I would like to have a similar panel and workshop for other kinds of agencies and organizations, quite frankly. So thank you. Oh, you're muted, Beth.
That's because I'm trying to do 6 things at once.
I know. Thank you.
We're going to save questions for Sue and Deb at the same time at the end of Deb's presentation. So, Deb, do you want me to share your slides? I'd be happy to do that for you, or
I can pull them up myself.
Okay, let me
So
make you a co-host. Hold on, just in case that's a problem, because that can be a problem.
here, let's see if it lets me.
I made you a co-host just in case it's a problem.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Now, where are my slides?
I was having trouble with that too, Deb. So I just basically turned off all my tabs except for the presentation and then just shared my screen and that worked. I did that right before we started. So
Okay, yeah, because I don't see
yeah, I didn't either. So I
interesting.
just kind of made it my full screen presentation and then just
You,
shared my screen.
do you love it how it disappears just at presentation time?
Yeah, always, right? Okay, hold on. Well, now it's not letting me get rid of, there we go. Hang on. Sorry, everybody.
It's a small group. We can all be casual, even if it wasn't a small group.
That's why I trusted Beth to share it more than I trusted myself to find it.
Hey, Taysa learned how to do breakout rooms yesterday. So, there's a learning curve for all of us.
Ooh, that's a big deal.
The bigger deal
there.
is that Beth showed Taysa how to do breakup rooms. So props to Beth.
Yeah, the technology is not always my strong suit, but I've been teaching her some things, so old dogs can learn new tricks. Deb, you want me to share or you got it?
I'm just closing a bunch of tabs. Let me just do this and then see if it will show up now. If not, then, oh, there it is. Look at that.
All right, we can see your screen.
Okay, let me put it in. There we go. All right. Are we all good? You can hear me and see the screen?
Yes, both.
Great. Okay, awesome. So hi everybody. Thanks for inviting me. And Susan, I think you probably know Lainey. She at Northern Vermont AHEC, so she's one of our alums, and we have had students with Northern Vermont AHEC for a while. I just saw Lainey yesterday. She was presenting to my students about working with her this semester. We have kind of two different ways that students engage with communities or placements, or I'll explain to you kind of the different language that I'll use. But first, just to tell you a little bit about our program. So we have an undergraduate public health major at UVM. It's been around since 2018. I'm the director of the program. We have about 225 students in our program, which means we graduate between 50 and 60 every year. These are students that have gone through, a pretty well scaffolded curriculum. We're nationally accredited by the same folks that accredit MPH programs. I mean, the criteria is different, obviously, because it's graduate versus undergraduate. But, when I'm talking to partners, I often talk about, the coursework that the students have done. So things like health promotion, health communication, research methods. One that I actually forgot to add to this list is program planning and evaluation. They go through this kind of scaffolded curriculum. So when we talk about interns, especially if they're seniors, which is the primary thing I'm going to focus on today, these are students that are about to enter the workforce. They've gone through a pretty robust curriculum, and they've got some pretty good skills that they can contribute to sites. So you kind of know what you're going to get. Obviously, there's some variation with students, individual students, but by and large, they've all kind of had this, general undergraduate public health training. And really, our program is really focused on one of the things. Our program was new, really, when I started in 2018, and I mean, we started from scratch with what is our mission going to be, and if we do one thing right, what is that? And we really focus on. We want students to really work towards health equity, which seems like a no-brainer because it's public health, but surprisingly, it is not always embedded in the same way in programs across the country. So we really take our role quite seriously to encourage students to think about systems and structures and individuals embedded in those systems and structures, and really focus on equity and improving health outcomes for populations. Sorry, I'm still getting over an illness if I have to stop and cough. We have, like I said, we have two primary ways that our students engage with partners. The first one is the senior capstone. And that's a service learning based course. So I will sometimes with partners use the term service learning and internship interchangeably because they can be one and the same, but they are not always. So what I mean by that is that service learning is really about reciprocity. It's about I work to identify partnerships and help the partners develop position descriptions. And those are really based on partner identified and community identified needs, as opposed to an intern coming to you, cold calling you and saying, "Hey, I really need to get experience. Can you put together a position description for me?" I work all through the fall in particular to identify partners and work with partners to identify what their needs might be. And sometimes those look like very defined projects, like, oh my gosh, I have a beginning and end, and this is the deliverable. And sometimes it looks like I have this thing on my bucket list. It's kind of nebulous. I'm not entirely sure. And I help them kind of craft a position for students. One of my goals um, in this class and in connecting students to our partners or potential partners is that it really serves to lighten the load on partners as opposed to saying, "Hey, will you take this student and supervise them and add to your already very full plate?" What we really want to do is develop that reciprocity where students are learning, but they're really contributing and they're taking something from you and doing a really good job with it so that, maybe it's something that you've, had on the back burner for a really long time that a student can actually take on. Maybe it's this idea that you've wanted to launch and haven't had the people power to do that. The last thing that I want is for our students to feel like burdens, and that the role of the partner is to do all the education and all the training and all the everything. So we have students, they have associated coursework. So when they're in their senior capstone, the expectation for the service work is 60 hours throughout the semester. And then they're also coming to class. And so that's where they get a lot of that mentorship, and guidance from us. So it doesn't all rest on the community partner. The students aren't just kind of floating on their own and asking you all the questions. They have us to help mentor them through that process. Um, and some of what that looks like is that we take our jobs pretty seriously in terms of making sure students are ready to engage in the internship. Years ago, I was working at the University of Washington, and I started to notice that MPH students were arriving and they were told, "Hey, identify your practicum and go start it." And you can imagine that they're all coming in with varied backgrounds around public health and community engagement. And so when we started this undergraduate program, we really thought about and we talked to partners about, what is it that you want students to know and be able to do other than the obvious academic stuff um, as they begin their engagement with you. And so we do assignments with them that are things like, we have them do a lot of reflecting on power and privilege and their own identities and what it means to engage authentically with communities, especially communities to which they don't belong. So that kind of who am I as an outsider? We do a lot of challenging students to think about, okay, who is your organization? And rather than just coming to you and saying, "Hey, can you tell me everything there is to know about your organization?" We ask students to kind of, to paint that picture for us. So they look at the website, they look at the mission, they look at the programs, they try and get the lay of the land so that when they come to you, they're ready. They have at least a general understanding of who the organization is, what you're about. If you've got a annual report on your website, we ask them to read that. So they have some preparation, who you serve, what you do, why you do it. And so that's kind of the capstone in a nutshell. So I do all the work primarily in the fall because our biggest group of students is in the spring. So I have 55 students right now that are just starting their capstone projects. And then in the fall, I usually have about 15. So I do most of the partnership development in the fall. We also allow students to do independent internships. So that's when a student finds something that on their own, and they come to us and say, "Hey, I found this internship on Handshake or here or there, wherever, or I reached out to this organization. Can I do it for credit?" And so at any point in their degree, students can do it and get credit for it. It's just much more independent. It's much more of a kind of traditional internship. So they're not getting kind of that same academic guidance and all that stuff as they would with the capstone. And they're not always seniors. They might be, in fact, they're usually not seniors. They're usually kind of sophomores or juniors. But that's a much more kind of typical internship. They still have to do an internship contract and all of those things, and some academic work, but everything that I think Susan said, I would echo. Clearly defined expectations, consistent communication, opportunities for learning. So anytime students can be invited to sit in on a meeting or things like that, where they can learn what it feels like to be, in a role in your organization. I think that's really useful for them. And then how to find interns. I think there are numerous programs at UVM. I think you mentioned, Susan, posting on Handshake. That's through the UVM Career and Internship Center. So that is a space that you can find interns. We also have a UVM office for community engaged learning, and I work with them on the service learning piece. So sometimes partners will email and say, hey, do you all have a class that, sometimes classes will do a specific project. That entire class will work on a project, which is also a cool way to do service learning. So if you're like, oh, we have this kind of bigger thing that we would love for a class to tell us what to do about it, the Community Engaged Learning Office can identify faculty that might be teaching classes that would fit with that. And then there are obviously specific programs at UVM like mine. Something else interesting for you to know in terms of, so we offer credit. I would love to have funding to pay every student to do every internship. We don't. And so in lieu of that, it's embedded in our curriculum. So it gives them, at least they're getting something for it. And we give them the time to do it. So it's embedded in their curriculum. And to me, that's what it means to have an equitable program, because if some students were able to just go off and do all these internship and build their resumes, and other students weren't, then we would be doing those students a disservice. So it's embedded into our curriculum. Like I said, they meet like a normal class, and what we consider the homework is their site work. So we don't give them out of class homework to do. They do all their work in class, in groups with us there. So I guess that's it for me. I'm obviously open for questions. That was a pretty quick summary of our program. So
Thanks, Deb. That was great. So let's take a few minutes. Just there's so few of us. I think raising your hands is not necessary. Just jump in if you have questions, particularly for Sue and Deb around the program aspect of it. Cassandra and Jess will talk about their experiences within those programs, but questions about particular for these two would be great. Just jump right in and ask questions.
My question is for Deb. Deb, I was just wondering if two things. I have mostly been working with Barbara Rachelson, and I'm just curious, like, I'm trying to understand, like you were just mentioning, the different ways to do internships, like how you two are connected, because I haven't ever talked to you directly. So I just want to make sure, like, if you're reaching out to her, not, like, I just don't want to double, you know, ask for two different people. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, if we were looking for more interns from UVM, how to do that. So if you could explain that a little bit more. And then also you said that you're starting to place for capstones, and the fall's usually when you do it. Since we're just hearing about it now in January, I don't know, kind of like Sue's was saying that she has still some openings, and just wondering about your if it's like a hard deadline, or if there's still some time. So those are my two questions for you. Thanks.
So Barbara, I know UVM structure is so interesting. I'll give you a good comparison. When I was, so I'm from Montreal, but I did my graduate work and started teaching at University of Washington in Seattle. They had this centralized office that if anyone wanted to do internships or service learning, you would go there and they would have this like amazing inventory of like where students have been. It didn't matter what program they were in. Everything kind of coalesced in this center. That doesn't exist at UVM. And so it is exactly what you are thinking it is. So Barbara teaches as a part-time, she teaches one class, an internship class within the College of Arts and Sciences. Any student can register for it. It's a internship class, so I think they have some in-class work that they do. It's focused on working with nonprofits, largely. But those students come from anywhere and everywhere. So they might be freshmen, they might be seniors, they might be in English, they might be in history, they might be in a health related, it's kind of varied. So it's a great opportunity for students to kind of get their toes wet in an internship. And Barbara's great. We do not work together. I am in the College of Nursing and Health Sciences, and our capstone in particular is a senior culminating. So like I said at the beginning, like it's different because these students have all, they've all done their degree, they're about to graduate. This is their kind of applied learning that they do at the end, right before graduating. Our internship. So that part, the capstone class started this week. So we already have the sites for that class. But I always have students that want to do internships. Always, always. They may not be seniors, but they are public health students that are at some point in their degree. So I got probably 3 emails last week with like, hey, Deb, do you know anywhere that I can do an internship? So it's not too late for that, especially if we do it soon, because I can send it out to students and they can still get credit for it this semester. I always have students that are asking for summer. And the cool thing about summer is that our Career Center has some funding too. And so if students identify an internship, they can apply for $3,000 of funding through our Career Center. And they're quite likely to get it. I mean, there are typically, not too many more students than there is funding. And so that is one way that you could still access students. So, but yeah, I mean, whatever program it's kind of luck of the draw. If like I know you and I reach out to you, I mean, it's ridiculous in one way and really inefficient, but it's what we've got. And so
I really, really appreciate that explanation. Thank you so much.
yeah.
And that's why we're here today, because it is so different. Go ahead, Amy.
So this is so wonderful. Thank you to you both for sharing. I know some of my partners on this call have been like guiding me a little bit, and I'm a one-person show. I work part-time and I have a tobacco prevention coalition. I am also housed at Northwestern Medical Center. And so I've been real tentative about an intern, knowing that it would be hard for me. I don't manage personnel ever. So I was scared of it. But doing a little bit of it now outside of these programs, but feeling a little bit more confident. And so my question is, that was a little too much Amy talk. My question is, like, how do I get listed with you all as, I have as a public health entity who would love to take on an intern or two?
I mean, I can put you on my list right now. I'll pull up my spreadsheet and put you on there.
I'll put my info in the chat.
Yeah, I would need your email address, like just give me your email address and your organization and I'll add you to my distribution list. Jessica takes my students. So
she's been one of the people guiding me. And so I feel like she brought me up to the precipice. And so here I am taking the leap. And
great. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
And Amy, I can send you information if you might want a summer student for the summertime. Definitely, they would love to be associated with something like that. So
yeah, and I think I'm going to send out the application from Susan to my students, so they may be the students that go through so.
Right.
So if you want, so put your emails in the chat, and then they can.
That'd be great.
Okay. Other questions for Sue and Deb? And you can ask questions of them throughout, but I just wanted to make sure anybody had any specific questions. Sue, did you have something else you wanted to add? Just checking.
No, just that I can send out the link to, I don't know if you're going to send out anything, Beth, following this, but the slides that had all of my information also has the link, but I can send that. So
okay, or you can put it in the chat right now.
I'll put it in. So
yeah, go ahead, Paul. Welcome.
Thank you, Beth. Deb, I'm out of state, but I do prevention work for the New England region. And so I was wondering if, if that excludes me from opportunities to work with your students. And I'm thinking about mostly just people doing remote work, which isn't ideal for a lot of folks to not do on-site stuff, I realize.
Does not exclude you. We actually have, we regularly have at least one national organization that has their meetings are people are living in all sorts of different places. So, and it is primarily they do, they're kind of like research assistants. They, do research around different policies. They're specifically looking at policies around birth, midwives, and birth in various states. So, I guess the short answer is you are absolutely not excluded. We have we have them all the time.
Great, good question, Paul. Thanks. All right, well, let's move on. I'd like to introduce our second two presenters, and we'll have time at the end for questions from them as well, or general questions. These two panelists, you all know, represent Vermont prevention organizations who have successfully engaged student interns. And I chose two people who I knew would have no trouble talking about their programs and who I know have been really successful and have actually guided, as Amy said, some of us here. So our presenters are Jessica Bickford. Jess is the coordinator for Healthy Lamoille Valley, and Jess has over 20 years experience in community organizing, with 9 of those, I can believe this, Jess, when I wrote this, in primary community level prevention.
I think
9
that's
years.
old. It's actually 11.
11?
I just hit
Oh
my
my,
11-year
right.
mark.
Well,
So
all right, that was an old
yeah.
bio. Jess and her coalition are graduates of the CADCA Graduate Coalition Academy and a 2023 Blue Ribbon Coalition recipients. In her work, Jess has spearheaded the creation of multiple community level resources that have been used to lead to meaningful local change and have been replicated in coalitions across the state. Jess and her staff have worked with interns in various settings who have gotten on to some very interesting positions around the state and nationally. So Jess will tell us about that. Our other presenter is Cassandra Holloway, and Cassandra has been with Building a Positive Community in Brattleboro since 2012. She has been BAPC's executive director for over a decade now, and she has over 20 years of nonprofit experience and a master's in managing mission-driven organizations. And she shares with us that she has worked with over 15 college interns since 2020, which is pretty impressive. So we'll start with Jess, and Cassandra has some slides that she'll share. So go ahead, Jess, go ahead.
I opted not to do slides. I like to see all of you, and I find that they just kind of get in the way a little bit, but I do have my notes on my other screen over here. So thank you, Beth, and thank you all for being here. Yeah, so interns are amazing. They're amazing people. They want to learn. And it's just been really exciting to work with them. I think my first intern was way back in my Parks and Rec days. As an education major, helping me in my after-school program from Plymouth State. And just over the years, I've picked up a few bits of like insights, and so I tried to compile some of those insights on how to best work with them. Probably one of my more successful interns. Was actually Brian Duda, who many of you know, who was our youth coordinator. As part of his internship, we wanted to expand capacity. And so his project was help us lay the groundwork for a youth coordinator position. And so he did that, working with some youth and our community. And then he went off to do another position because he was like, oh, I want to do grad school immediately, and it wouldn't be fair to take this position. And then COVID came along and my position reopened up, and I was like, hey, are you still interested? So he actually came back and worked for us until last spring, and now he's doing grad school out in Colorado. So he is not our first intern we've hired, though. I was realizing and kind of tallying it up, and we've actually hired 3 interns over the years. One of those actually was a UVM intern who filled in some during Allison's sabbatical last year, so in a temp position. So there's a lot of potentials with interns. And I say that just so you can kind of be thinking about that. So I wanted to just kind of start with just sharing some considerations as you're starting to think about interns. And one is just that as you're thinking about this, think of something tangible that's a fillable need for your organization, but also gives real world experience for the students. Last year, or last fall's interns from UVM in the capstone program, they were like, we had them doing a cannabis education program. And they were like, this is so great because it's taking this like book learning and putting it into the practical and thinking about community partners and stakeholders and how they're going to receive this message. And so so you want to make sure that whatever you're doing has benefit to both of you. I've started thinking about internships as a way to kind of fill some holes that we might have, something that I think Deb mentioned this, that we wanted to do, but we don't really have enough to go deeply into that project, or it's the one that keeps getting pushed to the back burner. So really thinking about how can we use those interns to kind of build our capacity, and the work going forward. This upcoming semester, one of our projects is around volunteer management. And so really looking forward to, and how do we recognize those volunteers and utilize them well? Being a coalition, any given time, we probably have about 350 people locally in our orbit doing the work, because we really try to embed that in others' work, but that also takes a lot of management to do. And there's ways that we can definitely improve that. So, also, thinking about this, if you do have a team, and thinking of team broadly, this might be community partners, this might be coalition members, steering team, involve your team in planning for the intern. Don't try to work in isolation here. So we have a volunteer right now who volunteers regularly, and bringing her in and knowing that she's going to meet with some of these interns on what's her perspective and experience volunteering. How does she see our room for growth? So don't work in isolation, as you're thinking about interns. Going to transition now into thinking about the steps to preparing to bring on an intern. This process really wants to start at least, the semester before you're ready for the intern, but maybe even a year out. Maybe it's as you're writing a grant, if you're writing for a DFC or another, which is drug-free communities, or another grant, really starting to think of this, down the road. So you're not scrambling last minute, and you have an intentionality about this and how you're going to build capacity. So as you're thinking about this, you want to clearly identify the projects and periods of those projects. You might have something, and there might not be readiness yet, in your community, or maybe the project is building the readiness. So kind of thinking about that. You want to have projects that have enough independent work that you can assign pieces of the project to the students, that you're not feeling like you have to be there, every step of the way. You do want to check in with them regularly, and provide that guidance, but you shouldn't be feeling like, oh, this is adding 60 extra hours of me to this project. Also, you want to identify your organizational onboarding process. For us, we're part of a larger organization that requires a 2-week background check typically, for that. So you want to be really clear that, if you're coming to my site, there's going to be a background check. And I've figured out what to do in that 2-week period. So the students can actually start doing some work during that. They're not doing community level work during that time. I think this is, we have a couple of people on the call today, but it's contact your university or school, and again, you want to do that, in advance. Find your person at the university, or even at your high school if you're using high school interns. Also define any project management systems that you're going to be using. We use Basecamp as well as shared Google Drive or Word drives. Make sure those all work. And identify a supervisor with your organization. You want one person that's going to be the main contact for that student. They may work with your team, but not trying to have them answer to multiple people during their time. And so if you have multiple interns, it can be that you're splitting that up depending on the way the projects work. Right now, we also have a University of New England intern who found us. And so she's working with Allison. Policy people would work with Allison. I'm going to hold the volunteer piece. So just kind of have that clear clear lead. They're also that person is also your clear communicator with the university on those projects, will be doing any evaluations and that sort of thing. Identify a location. So not all projects are on site, depending on, whether it's a high school intern, then yes, most likely you're meeting on site. But if, for us, for the capstone, we make that a virtual option, recognizing that we're an hour and 10 minutes out from the university, and it's not practical for a lot of those students to drive to us. So identifying that in advance. Also, another really important thing is to know and consider the timing of the work and the reality of the student's time. If they are coming to you during a semester, it's about 16 weeks, but you're going to have a recruitment period in that. They have midterms, they have finals, they have a break week in there. So knowing the school's academic calendar. So with a semester-long internship, you might have 10 to 12 contact weeks with the student. So you kind of want to look at, okay, and that's 60 hours. So we're kind of looking at probably around 6 hours a week here, give or take, recognizing that students may tell you, hey, I have this really busy project for my other class. I'm not going to see you this week. So being willing to be flexible with the students there. Also recognizing that 10 to 12 weeks is probably going to be some time for you. So you'll want to plan 1 to 2 hours a week, most likely. I like to meet with my interns weekly, just to kind of a check-in. That way, if they have questions, and that's not a long check-in, that typically is about a half hour. So it's just a touch point where they're not on site. And then I invite whoever needs to be part of that meeting for that week to guide the project into that meeting. So my first 2 weeks, which is also the background check period for us, is typically orientation or research. Students have access to academic journals that we as coalition partners might not. So I always have a research component, and I have them print those to PDFs, so that way we can gain and deepen our knowledge base of whatever topic. It's also a chance for them to learn a little bit more about prevention. Deb's students are great, but not every program students are coming in at the same entry point. But also, even if no matter how great they are, unless they've really done a lot of work in prevention, it's good to give them an orientation. And Mariah's first year in prevention, I don't have them go through the full document. They're not doing a full year for me, but I do pull a couple articles from that. I also have them go through our prevention toolkit just to kind of give them some grounding in the material and a chance to ask questions about the work, because you're also giving them the opportunity to explore prevention as a potential career path. So you want to lay a good groundwork there for them for the future. And then we move into a 2 to 3 week smaller project. This helps me to learn how they work. And then whatever the main project is, I typically plan for 4 to 6 weeks, and then a week of wrap up at the end. I may have them do a presentation to our team. There's been a few that I've opened up with their permission for statewide. I think using the internet and how, in prevention and social media was one that we had opened up statewide for prevention partners a few years back. Also recognizing that they may have concurrent classwork along the way. So they may want some of our time to answer questions to support other projects or things they have going. I know that I'm running short on time, so just want to say how important that intro meeting is with them. I try to do that in person. It's really getting to know them. Also, like planning to recognize and thank them along the way. They're giving us something really tangible, and thanking them doesn't have to be big things. It could be a cool sticker that if they like otters, or it could be, baking them cookies, or, sitting down and having coffee with them, or, so it's kind of thinking about that, but getting to know them and what types of things will work for them. Finding out what motivates them is really key, what makes them feel successful, and just asking them that sort of thing. And then also during that welcome time are just some of the logistics of forms and times of communication. Do they prefer text? Well, if you send them an email, do they also want a text to say, check your email? Those sort of things. Best meeting times. What technology do they use? Knowing that sometimes, like if they're using fully Google Drive, but you're a Microsoft organization, like how is that going to work? And thinking through that and addressing that early with them, or giving them access to things like Canva or Basecamp. And my I guess parting shot here is kind of make sure there's always an avenue that if something's not working for them, they feel comfortable coming to you, but also that goes two ways. Like, hey, I really need communication to work different here. And so it doesn't feel punitive either way. I know that I sometimes like I'm really frenetic in my style of communication. And so I just name that right up front in that meeting. Like, hey, I recognize sometimes I'm going so many different directions. And it's really helpful for you to have the best experience. And I want you to have the best experience, but that might be asking me to slow down, clarify, repeat. And I will do the same for you because we want this to be successful. And then also knowing that sometimes you have students who are so efficient, they're going to fly through your projects. So do you have a few back pocket? Can you have them write a blog post? Can you have them do a little bit of more supplemental research or create a toolkit of the resources that are already out there? We did that with one of our students last semester of, taking some messaging and websites and creating a toolkit that we could use locally. So there's a lot there. I'm happy to chat with anybody. We've had really good success with our interns.
Thanks, Jess. We appreciate that. I can attest to the success that they've had with their interns. Before we take questions, let's go ahead and let Cassandra go ahead and present. She's going to share some slides and then we'll take questions at the end. Go ahead, Cassandra.
Okay. Try not to be too duplicative because I think there's some there that we both share, Jess, but I even just learned a lot just from you. So that's really helpful. Okay, so like Beth said, I have worked with about 16 interns over since 2020. And I have not expanded my outreach to interns beyond UVM, and that has been with Barbara Rachelson and also with Susan. So Susan White from who just spoke. So I think that I've been leaning on them a lot. So trying to have time to actually use Handshake and also to expand to using more high school students so that I can have that age demographic as well, kind of start to explore our work and to give their input. We don't have really, we have a CCV here in town, but we don't really have a lot of colleges in this area. So I think that's makes it challenging. But we do have like UMass Amherst and Keene State College. So I'm definitely interested in trying to get more local interns so that they can be more connected to our community. I'll share a little bit more about that. So similar to Jessica speaking about how to picking projects, I kind of have this little wish list that I have of either things I want to do or want to explore or research or something that I want to enhance. So that's like my wish list. And usually when I'm doing that, I'm also trying to think about where can we get more of a younger perspective. They have expertise we don't necessarily have, and also lived experience that we do not have. So I get really excited to be able to get that, to bring that kind of energy into the work. Usually I do like low risk, high reward projects, meaning not something that has a lot leaning on it. So if it's not exactly how we want it to be, it might just be more of like a first draft of something that we can utilize. We might be able to pull pieces out of. So just another thing to think about if you're kind of nervous about giving something over to an intern. There's always stuff that can still be pull pieces pulled out of it. Or it's just not necessarily like super concerning if it's not, exactly how you would want it to be in the end. But I've always been really impressed by the work that has come out of my interns. Jess was talking about like having tangible deliverables. I think it just really is rewarding for them to be able to say, have their mark on it, to be able to put it into their resume, to have something tangible to show about what they've done in working with you. I generally focus on teams of 2 to 4. That's kind of my jam. But I always want to have people have autonomy, not only in working solo, but also how they make decisions around things. So I do like to trust them in a lot of ways that I think sometimes does make people nervous because usually again, I'm trying to give them projects that I'm trying to bring their lens into. So that's the intention. So I think that has given them a lot of confidence that they didn't have coming into some of these internships. And that comes up a lot for me of working, like, having this trust given to them and having to make decisions on their own. And I think that I really am proud of that piece of it, of what I'm offering them in that personal growth. Anytime there's like trainings that I can access, they can access. So sometimes stuff that's already being done by the state. I've had funding sometimes due to like Search Institute's developmental assets as an example. There was like one time like something through the positive cultural framework training that they were able to go to. I get them all signed up for CADCA as part of our coalition so they can access stuff there. Udemy is really great too, to, you pay with $30 and they can get a certificate. So anything that's related to the project or to the work, I try to give them as much as possible. And that also kind of front loads them as well on top of just understanding the coalition. And then networking, bringing them to our meetings, our virtual meetings, connecting them to people that we have in our network to help them in their work that they're doing. And then usually I'll ask them for their resume. I will say, because I work with all like grades generally, some people, their resume does not speak to anything in the field. It might just be like they worked at an ice cream shop and then they did something else, but it still gives you a sense of their interest. Do they like working with people? Are they more into administrative? What are their interests? Usually they'll put in clubs that they were part of or volunteering. So you just kind of get a little bit of a sense of them. But when I meet with them one-on-one, I usually ask them what classes they're really enjoying. What degree are they looking into? What are they envisioning for themselves when they get out of college? And why did they pick this project or this organization to work with? And from there, I'll ask them, I usually kind of have them tier the projects that they're interested in. I like to kind of give them like here's 8 projects. I think these 3 would be perfect for you. If you were to be part of these 3 projects, which ones really get you excited? And then I try to team them up based on the most interest. I think teams are best with these solo opportunities within that, working together with their classmates. Weekly meetings, I haven't had a problem with that, and all the time I've worked. Sometimes it's odd hours, but I usually have a time that we can all meet for, again, like a check-in, and I'll talk a little bit about that, where we assign tasks. I get them on Asana. We have a Google Drive where they put all their stuff in. And on those weekly meetings, I've had like up to 6 or 8 interns at one time and kind of pair them up for the projects they're interested in. And to Justin's point, like I kind of prioritize that too. So I'll be like, hey, finish this. And if you have more time, you can go to this. I let them share about their progress and share with each other, because even though they're not involved in it, I think it's good for them to have a better sense of what the other interns are doing. It's just a good way for them to present the work that they're doing. And then I do a halfway check. So halfway through the semester, I'll meet with them one-on-one to see how it's feeling for them as individuals, since my weekly meetings are with all of them, and how it is working with their teams. I'm very fortunate that I have not had any concerns around teamwork. It seems like everybody's happy working with each other. I think mostly because we assign tasks to who's doing it. But yeah, I think that it's good for them just to feel like they have a time to kind of reflect and share any feedback with me in that halfway point. So we do at the weekly meetings, everybody shares their progress, answer questions, and then we decide what the next week's going to look like for tasks, and who's going to do it. It's pretty much the gist of it. So that's kind of a weekly meeting. And then when we wrap up, we have their evaluations. Usually I will go over their evaluations with them. I'm very transparent. I ask them if they feel like I missed anything. I ask if they disagree with anything that I've written. I'm very honest in those evaluations. And I have learned to start making those into letters of references right away, because sometimes I hear back from them 2 years later and they want a letter of reference, and I have to dig back about what they did. And usually I use that evaluation to help me with that letter of reference. So I'm trying to start just doing it right away, because I'd say like 80% of the time they're going to reach back out to you for something. And like Beth was saying the other day, like sometimes they'll reach out multiple times because they're looking at multiple jobs and you're kind of like their reference. So just be prepared for that. If they're on LinkedIn, I try to connect with them there because I'm always curious where they're going. I did ask them for feedback, which will be the next part of this presentation. I reached out to all 16 of those interns. I've heard back from 10. So that's a pretty good indication of their, interest in staying connected with us. I asked them about future internships, and I have extended internships as well as had them come back to work with me later on. And that always feels really good. And to Justin's point, if I have any opportunity for stipends, I'll do it, though I generally don't have it. And always ways to show appreciation for them. So takeaways this is based on what they gave me for feedback. I'm not going to go over all the like small bullets, though I'm sure this will be shared with you. But I asked them basically like, what did you gain? What shaped your kind of experience? So from this, they had a better understanding about public health. They developed skills. They enjoyed their hands-on experience. They got a better understanding of how nonprofits work and how the work we do is connected to the community. Technical proficiency, getting used to using Canva. Somebody did a SWOT analysis with us. Professional growth, looking at like something like a strategic plan, for example, working with diverse perspectives. So we obviously work with a lot of different populations, so that's sometimes new for them. Just practical insight into a community and the dynamics of a community and how to, in this case, support youth in a meaningful way. Prevention messaging is always really exciting for them. That's a big part of a lot of times interns are doing, is helping us with messaging to different demographics, understanding what a community's need is, the whole deeper understanding of mental health and substance use prevention, introductions to youth initiatives, and then also youth development and advocacy. So those were what came out of, 3 more. Exposure to coalition decision making, understanding, recognizing key public health connections, and inspired public health interests. So that means that working it with us, they have a deeper interest in working in public health. So that's exciting. So I got a lot written, but that was kind of the themes. So what was the impact for them? I get excited about what their experience is as much as it helps us. It just makes me think about the workforce development that we have. And so these are just some that were mentioned: sparked interest in public health, community health, and rural healthcare, inspired focus on youth development, child and family health, solidifying desire to work in nonprofits, mental health and community outreach, encouraged exploration of non-clinical healthcare roles, gained appreciation for the impact of organizations like BAPC on community wellness, and motivated to work on team projects that make a meaningful difference. I did ask if they liked working on teams or solo, and all of them either said the hybrid aspect of that, of working with both teams and themselves just alone, or just working on teams. So just putting that out there. I think it takes a lot of burden off of you too, that they can kind of problem solve together. These are just some quotes. I have 4. So this is just like my little excitement. And I just wanted to specifically quote them. So this is Simone. She just was finished working with us. She says, my internship with BAPC showed me a lot about the inner workings of nonprofit work, which I previously had not been an interest of mine. But after enhancing my relationship with Cassandra, I have decided to enter the career field of mental health and become a licensed mental health counselor. And she's going to be doing that with youth. And I truly attribute a lot of my career change to this internship. Libby Tuttle, who's right now in Panama, became a youth health facilitator in the Peace Corps. She really just felt like It cemented her interest in health promotion, youth engagement, and pursuing a career in public health. And Julia Saracen, you might know her. She's actually working in the Department of Health right now on injury prevention, and she's doing the cannabis lockboxes that are now being pitched. That's her project that she's working on. And she said it made her realize her passion of youth, children, family health, and the idea of resiliency and commitment and centering youth in conversations and how to best promote their well-being was a huge paradigm shift in my outlook on public health services and a mentality I carry to this day. And then one of my first interns, this was kind of prompted me. I have three that were my first with Susan, and this one is Ben. And he said that he wanted initially to go to medical school, but the internship now has more involved in healthcare industry beyond the clinical path. And now he's in life science consulting industry, working with doctors and patients, improving pharmaceutical launches. So that was really awesome. And I think having feedback from them, it helps us to know that, we're making a difference in their lives. And these are some improvements. I also asked what they can improve. So they felt like it would be nice to have clear guidelines and examples of projects that are similar to the ones they're doing that kind of meet our standards. They're also would like more in person. And again, this is hard with students being so far. But that is something I'm just like coming into our community and seeing what the community is that they're supporting and getting to meet me in person. And this other person says, or some other people said, more frequent check-ins and working closer together. I don't know how they work together. I kind of just say figure it out, but maybe encouraging them to be in person more than doing stuff remotely, because they might just be doing stuff on Zoom. And then also just having a better understanding of our infrastructure and the community challenges and the dynamics that we have. So those are some ideas for improvement. So yeah, so that was a really actually this presentation got me to be able to get that feedback that I hadn't asked for before. So I've learned even just preparing for this how to improve my own experience with internships. But yay! So I hope Jess and I have inspired you all.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Cassandra. I love your graphics, by the way. They're really adorable. So thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. So questions for these two, or Sue and Deb too as well. It's up to you guys.
Cassandra, I'm glad that you brought up letter of reference, because I'm going to try to encourage students to ask for that before they leave, just so that it helps, even if it's a general one, so that, yeah.
Yeah, I will say that part of the challenge with me has been some of our interns are really like right out there and they're engaged, like they're dynamic and they're engaged. And then there's other ones that are a little bit more reserved. And then 2 years later, they're almost all white 20-something-year-old girls, women that are just staring at the camera. And then I'm trying to remember who who are they? And I think that's a challenge with remote too, is actually building rapport with them is a little bit more challenging. So, in the moment, it's a lot easier for me to remember who they are as a person. It's more about their personality and like their dynamic versus the projects they worked on. So yeah, especially if they're doing remote, I think it's important to let them know, places that work with a lot of interns, it's like working with high school students, it's like a lot easier for them to remember us than us remembering the details of them. So thank you.
Other questions?
No, but I'll give a thank you because this is the first year that I've said yes to interns, and I happen to get two. And I feel like just listening to you all over time, it clicked that there was a project that I've been meaning to get to, but I can't get to it. And it's a different population. And here's a college student who can help with this one. And then I found a local high school student in the health tech school student in the health professions came to me, got some interest. So we have some I found specific projects, and I was like, well, this is how it's done. So thank you. This kind of solidifies for me a lot of what I've been trying to do. But also thank you for all the encouragement, because it's been fun having them.
Yeah, Jess. Thanks, Dan.
And while not a formal internship, perhaps, but working with your allied health students or programs at your tech centers really is a great win-win. And depending on their year and the number of projects, we've had 2 or 3 projects just in this school year with our current allied health, and so those are sometimes an easier way to get your foot in the door because I have this project that has very defined, and you're often meeting with them in person. So that's actually a great kind of intro to get used to working with students.
Alex, go ahead. I see you unmuted
Yeah.
yourself.
Hi. We've done, the collaborative has done, I don't know how many years now, Susan, summer internships with AHEC. And in more recent years, the past 3 or 4 years, we found it very rewarding for us and for the interns involved to do combinations of 2 or 3 projects. So what I'm talking about is the collaborative is the lead also for the Green Peak Alliance in the Springfield Health District. But that means we've brought in Greater Falls Connection, and we've brought in Mount Escutney Regional Commission, rather. So between the 3 partners, we can really get very contrasting work. And the other thing that I really appreciate with AHEC is that you can specify if you desire for first generation students and also born Vermonters too. So just a few notes, but we've had really wonderful experiences and pretty much consistent top-notch students. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice.
Yeah, thank you, Alice. I think the students have really appreciated the multi-project aspect because it's then a little bit different. It gives them experiences in different ways. So they've been exciting projects. Thank you.
And something else that I wanted to say is I think that like sometimes they're just excited because everything's been so academic just to actually like be in it. I think there's another thing that I've heard a lot with them of like, we can sit there and read all about it and write papers about it, but actually doing the hands-on, it kind of cements everything that they've been learning, especially, with the students that have been in public health. So I love that we get to offer that to them.
I would love to connect to the high school students in our area. I mean, I'm just down the road from Fells Falls Union High School, and we're not very far from Wyndham Regional Career Center or the River Valley Tech. Because I love the energy of high school students. There's, but I've never taken the time to do that. So I would love to connect to high school students. To me, being with high school students cracks me up because I like their joy that most of them have. I mean, some of them are not joyful, but the ones who would volunteer to do this are, and that to me seems like something I'd really like to pursue at some point. And we can always hire Tasa's son Aiden to be our intern when he gets to high school because Nick, he's a big prevention guy. He loves prevention. Sarah, he loves Sarah, he loves Nick, he loves all those guys.
Yeah, he'd be a great messenger. Totally
Like,
recommend
those are my people. I'm like, don't steal my people.
So, any other questions? Go ahead, Sue.
I was just going to add that we had a high school intern from Stowe High School, Kate Luton, who some of you she was one of our prevention honorees for Prevention Day a few years ago. And she actually went from high school doing the work into a college program. So we really do have the opportunity to kind of build this field.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. And I think, first of all, I wanted to thank the panelists because your perspective is really important. And it also, shows the different levels of experiences you can have. And, Sarah was putting in the chat that she may not have the capacity to have an intern at this point, but she can see what comes down the road, like a year from now, she might be ready for an intern, but she has all this time to do the prep, which is really a piece of it. And I think that's, it takes a long time to understand that, that yes, no, I don't have the capacity, but I will in the future. And now I'm prepping for it. So I appreciate, Sarah Stearns, that you're looking at it that way. I really do. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
So
and I think sorry,
Go
can I
ahead.
say one more thing?
Yeah,
But yeah,
sure.
so because Susan has mentioned how I've had, she's helped me to kind of extend internship experiences. Sometimes that's really nice too, because if you're working on a project that could go a little longer, you could have an intern that's already been working with you for those 12 to 16 weeks, and now new interns are coming in, and so they're not all starting fresh, which is also nice if you can do some overlapping. So that also kind of takes a little bit of the burden off of you.
Yeah, we're meeting with our new intern from Barbara Rachelson's class on Monday, Tessa and I. So, we're a part of that as well. We really enjoy that. And I have to fill out my forms for Sue. I have them opened on my computer. So I put a little note, if you could complete the evaluation, it's a quick Survey Monkey. It's just a few questions. It also includes the NOMS data, which we're required from our funders to collect. So I'd appreciate it if you would do that. I will create a resource sheet, and I will also share out with everybody the PowerPoints and Jessica's notes when as well, probably at the end of the day or first thing Monday morning. Please tell your friends and family that we did this workshop, and I'll make available the recording to everyone as well. So I appreciate you all today, and I hope that you have a really great weekend and that you enjoy whatever is in your bag of tricks for the next couple of hours as well. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thanks, everybody.